Hello everyone, my name is Dan Quigley and I'm here to do a tech class with everyone who's watching. I don't know who will be, but hopefully this will be informative towards anybody who wants to come and work with us in the studio. So we set up some tech classes, but unfortunately no one showed up. So we're going to film it, and we have the crew back here, and they're going to help me with some camera shots so that we can get the shots we need so you can see just exactly what I'm doing. So right now I have the Sony FX1000, which is what we use in the studio. In fact, I'm looking at a Sony FX1000 right now. We have a few more off to the side. And so what is a camera and what does it do? It opens up a lens and light comes through the glass and hits a sensor that turns the light into the digital image that you're seeing right now. So there are a couple different parts of, or aspects of how to manipulate the camera and get the shot that you want. I guess the first thing that we would want to do, which might be pretty important, is turn the camera on. So, Louisa, if you could, cut to camera 1, please. Here we have on the back of this Sony camera a VCR setting, which would be for playing your video. But to turn it on, we want to go to this camera setting right here. And you will probably see this type of button on most Sony cameras. So if you're familiar with this, then you know. The red button, by the way, is record, although we do record a little bit differently in the studio with our TriCaster. But let's talk about some different types of aspects of the camera. For instance, focus. Focus is probably one of the most important things you want to do because you want to be able to see what it is that you're trying to film. So I'm going to set this up here. I'm going to get this eraser, see if I can get it to stand. And then, Louisa, if you could, cut to camera 1 again. All right, there you go. Now, you'll see on here that we have a ring. This ring, this second ring, let me get this right here. All right, so we have 3 rings right here. This one is our focus ring. This is our zoom. Oh no, see, I'm getting this messed up. That's okay. All right, this is our focus ring, the big ring. Then we have our zoom and our aperture, or iris, as it's usually called in the video world. So let's start with this focus ring right here. Now, if you can see on here, there's a little hand right here, and that's telling us where we are. What we start with, we have infinity, which means things that are infinitely away, distance-wise, from the camera will be in focus. And as I turn this, it goes down meters into what is in focus and what is not. So what I'm going to do is set up this little thing right here, and we're going to cut to my camera if we can. And not camera 1. Can you cut to the number 5, please? Okay, so great. There we go. Here we have the eraser and the marker. And you might notice that the marker, you can't really make out the edges. It's kind of blurry, of course, because it's not in focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this. And you can see, well, you might want to stay on 5, please. You can see how the different things are in focus, depending on what it is that I want to film. So if I want to film this, I focus for that, and if I want to film the eraser, I focus for that. Okay, so we're done with that for right now. But an important thing is when you're filming people, you want to, of course, make sure they're in focus. And one of the most important things to be in focus on a person is their eyes. So what you would want to do is go in and look at their eyes and focus on it. But you might say, well, the shot that I want to get, not close enough. So how would you do that? Well, there's a zoom feature on most cameras. Now, I've been advised not to zoom while you're filming, but you can set the zoom and then use that for your shot. So on here, we have a couple different ways to zoom. We have some buttons right here. We have that ring that I talked about before, right here. And then even on top of the camera, there's another button to zoom. So, for instance, how about I just use myself as an example, because that's always fun. Let's cut to camera 5, please. So, I would want to zoom in on my eyes and make sure they're in focus. Normally they might be like that, so I would focus it in like that, and then I would zoom out and set my shot, as long as I don't move the camera. So you zoom in and you get your focus, but you might say, well, my shot is looking too bright. And that's where you get into the aspect of exposure. And exposure basically stands for how the light interacts with the sensor, how much it's exposed. So there's two different distinct features that deal with exposure. We have aperture, or iris, as it's called, and shutter speed. Now let's talk about the iris first. Inside of the lens, there is small blades that fold in and open. And you can set different lengths that will control how much light will go through. If it's a large opening, more light will come through. If it's a small opening, not so much light will come through. So on that, we have this ring right here. That's our iris ring, as I was talking about before. So let's just take a look at, let's go here, yeah. You will see down here where it says f6.2. And as I move this dial, it will change. And you can see as you go up higher in numbers, the screen will get darker. So let's see, f1.7. Now, as you might have guessed, that would let in a lot of light. So the lower the number actually means the larger the opening of the camera. And as my f-stop number gets higher, it gets darker. But in order to set your aperture right, you have to already have set your shutter speed, which we haven't gone over yet. And what is shutter speed? Well, if you think about a motion picture or any type of video, what is it except for multiple pictures combined and combined with sound? So the thing for a film movie is common to have 24 frames per second. And that means that you're taking 24 pictures per second. And so when you do that, you would want to set that on the camera, which this one already is set. And I won't get too much into setting that because all these cameras should be set at 24. But let's take a look at this camera here and get a close-up on our screen here. So you can see it already says 24p scan. And that's what it should be set on. And I'm not going to get into where the setting is, but this is another number right here, and you'll notice that it's 48, and 48 is 2 times 24. That is our shutter speed right now, and that's what you would want to set it at. But how do you set the shutter speed? Well, if we take a look at the side of our camera here, we can see different buttons. It looks like a lot of buttons, but the one we want is right here, shutter speed. I'm going to push that. When I push that button, we get a box right here. And I can change the shutter speed with this selector right here. So as I move that, the numbers will change. And you'll notice that as I go through here, the amount of light and exposure will change. So let's just take a look again at this screen and see what happens when I change it. 48, that's what we would want, but I'm just going to go up so you can see the effect. The more pictures you take per second, and this can go pretty high, this can go to 10,000, but you can see the more that you take, that means the quicker the pictures are being taken, and that means less light per frame. So what we want to do is set it to 48, because we're doing 24 frames per second, and then we will want to set our exposure. Now there are some settings on here on the camera. Let's take a look again. I'm just going to go into the menu here, and I'm going to use that same wheel to go down. But you're going to have to see on here. All right, so we have a couple different things that are important. Something that I probably should have mentioned before is peaking. But let me show you again so you can see where it is. So all I did was press menu, and you have all these options. We're going to come down to the display settings, and going back to focus, I know this is a little off topic, but let's turn the peaking on. And peaking stands for it will show you what is in focus. So I'm just turn it on, and I'm going to say middle. It'll show me, you know, an average thing of what is in focus. And the color for it is red. Now, I'm not sure if we'll be able to see on the screen, but that's a very helpful tool to determine if what you're trying to focus on is truly in focus. But let's go back to our exposure conversation and talk about zebra. Now, zebra will tell you what is at a certain exposure level. And right now I have it on, and I have it at level 70. And you can set it at different settings. But for now, we're going to keep it at 70. I'm going to hit menu and get out of here. So the zebra is on again. But you can see on the screen that you can see those little white lines that are going. And that tells me that that's at an exposure level of 70. And as I change my aperture with this ring right here, you can see how the zebra lines change. So in my experience, I usually have it set on 70, and then have whatever is brightest. If it has zebra on it, then that's a pretty good setting. Because sometimes looking at the screen cannot really give you an accurate view of what your video is going to look like, and you're going to want to use a little help from the camera itself and have it do the work for you. So let's see here. We set our aperture ring, and we set ourselves to 70, so we can use this ring to figure out what it is that we want and exposed correctly. And I guess a couple other settings that I should go over, for instance, is you'll see that there's an iris exposure setting right here. And let's see, let me get this in right. Okay. So back to these buttons right here. Here's an iris exposure. And when I hit that, that will take that F number, that will turn that on and off. And it changes it from being manual to automatic. Now when you have the F number on there, see it's not on there right now, and if I push that iris button, there it is. So when that number is up there, that's when you know that you're in manual mode. Certainly you can do automatic, but if you want to get your best picture, then it's best to learn how to do it manually. And we can see that there are also, there's another switch on here that will show you the difference between to turn on auto and manual for focus, and that is right up here. You can see where it says focus right here, auto, manual. So maybe if you are having a little bit of trouble getting it in focus, then you might want to set it to auto. But especially in the studio where we have stationary cameras and stationary subjects, we do manual and we set it, and then that's it. So I guess we can also go into how it's recorded onto the camera itself. These cameras are DV cameras, which means that they take digital videotapes. And right here we have a little latch. And when we do that, our tray opens up and we can put a tape in there. Now the way we record up over here, we don't really need any tapes because we record directly to the computer's hard drive. But for instance, you take your tape, put it in there, pop it in and let it go. Now the one last part about operating the camera by yourself would be sound. And you wouldn't want your sound to go crazy, so you want to set that as well. And there's a sound section on this part of the camera as well, as you can see right here. That also, now what I did is I opened this up. That also has an auto and manual thing. So if I wanted to do that manually, I would switch it to manual, and then I would adjust this. Audio levels would appear on your screen, although they're not on here right now, probably because I'm not recording anything. But you would want to adjust them so that you don't go too loud on your audio. But usually we just keep that on auto. And now that is for the microphone that is built into the camera. But most people will tell you you don't want to get some camera audio. It would be much better if you had a separate instrument to do audio. And I'm going to do a section on audio at another time. But that's how to operate this camera specifically. And you might want to, when starting out, keep things on automatic. So you would set all those settings back on auto, the focus, the iris, and such. Now one thing we didn't talk about in this video is white balance. So let's get to that because white balance is quite important. Now let's go back to our close-up on these right here, and we can see that right next to our shutter speed we have a white balance setting. Now if you see on our screen right here, when I hit that button, that little A comes up right there on the screen. And when you do that, that's how you know that you have a preset. You have two presets here. You can set them A or B. So we have ours on A. Now the preset will be whatever it was set at before, but say we want to set it ourselves. Well, what we would do is set up our camera. Let's see here. Now, let's get a close-up again of here. I'll show this other button right here. And that is this one right here, this round one. So once you have that A up on the screen and you're in manual mode or the preset mode for white balance, you will set that by pushing in this button and holding it down. So here's my screen. If I can get this up. All right, let's get a close-up of that screen again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that button down and set the white balance. So for instance, let's cut to the camera 1, please. So for instance, I hold that down and you see how it blinks. And then when it stops blinking, that means it's set. But look at this. This looks kind of blue, huh? That doesn't really look like what it looks like in real life. So to do a white balance, you need something that's white. So here it is. I'm just going to put the screen in. See how I have that zoomed in right there? Normally we could zoom in just like you would on the eyes. You would zoom in on a whiteboard where your subject was, so that what your subject is and what this is would be in the same light. So this is a whiteboard, and I'm going to set that up right here in front of my camera, and I'm going to hit this button if I can find it. Alright, so let's take a look at what happens when I do this. I'm going to hold that down, it flashes, and now nothing's really happening, and you might say, why is that? Well, it's probably because it's really bright right now. Now see how those zebras come on? That's how I know, because this is white. This is the brightest thing I know that would be filmed in this location. So I'm going to get my exposure right, and then I'll hit that button, and it will be set. And when I do that, it will set the right color temperature. And then if we can cut to camera 5, please. All right, let's see here. There we go. Here's the studio, and you can see that's it's pretty accurate color. All right. So I think that might be a good basis for how the camera operates and just how to maneuver some of the things in here. And I know it probably wasn't the most straightforward thing. I know we had to bounce around a little bit, but now that you know the concepts and you can see how somebody operates it, what you might want to do is look up the manual, because the manual has everything that you need to learn. Somebody might say, oh, I just throw that manual out when I got the camera. Well, you know what? If you really want to learn how to operate the camera, that's what you'll read. And this is a Sony FX1000. All you got to do is type in Sony FX1000 manual on Google, and you'll have a PDF download in no time. So those are some of the basic concepts of the camera and how they work on this particular Sony model. Now I think we're going to maybe try and post this online, and if you have any questions or comments, then just let us know and we can address that in a further video. All right, thank you very much and have a nice day.